Sabbath, everyone. Good Sabbath. Good Sabbath. Shabbat Shalom. It's good to see everybody. We got a smaller group so far, but I'm sure we'll be joined as we go in this process. Meanwhile, if you're tuning in, if you're getting a chance to get your notification that we're having this live time today, I encourage you to drop us a note. Let us know you're here. Let us know where you're from, and if you would like us to answer a question, if you'd like to make a comment. If you'd like us to speak a prayer request, prayer over you, let us know, and we'll be happy to do that. Thank you so much for tuning in, wherever you may be. We have an exciting fifth week of the Torah for cycle today. This is very precious to most of us who reach a certain age and a certain level of maturity in the covenant of Torah, in the covenant of Avraham. Because this is the week of the passing of the guard, the handing off of the baton. This is the week in which we see, can we really do this blessing to every household and family and nation on the face of the earth gig without Avraham? Without Sarah? Can we still do it generation after generation after generation? Matter of fact, is this not what we are born for and why we are here to carry on this particular mission, the strategic initiative, the part of the grand plan for the redemption of mankind as a species, bloodline by bloodline and household by household, and for the restoration of creation to its intended state of beauty and fruitfulness and shalom and harmonious interaction of its various components and ecosystems? Can we do this without our patriarch? Can we do this without our matriarch? Can we do this without their leadership, without their guidance, without their example, without their model? Well, that's the question that we ask ourselves, and that gets answered partially in this week and in the weeks to come. And the answer, of course, is yes, we can. As a matter of fact, it's not only yes, we can. It is yes, we must. For the sake of the grand plan of the Creator of the universe, for the sake of the strategic initiative, for the sake of introducing the way that we've been talking about, the Derech Hashem, or the Derech Adonai, the pathway, the narrow path of redemption and restoration that He has put up in place upon the earth. For the sake of those things, not only can we continue after the death and burial and loss of our patriarch and matriarch, we must continue to do so. So, welcome to Chayei Sarah, the fifth of the Parshas of Torah. Chayei Sarah is usually translated a life, or the life of Sarah, the life force of Sarah, the ramifications, the repercussions of the fact that Sarah lived. The outliving, or outworking of Sarah's life in the lives of her progeny and of all people in the earth. And so I call this the Parsha of passing the torch, changing the guard, and carrying on. The readings that we'll be doing are from Genesis 23:1 through 25:18. There's just about 3 chapters. 3 very important transitional chapters that we will read, and the 2 basic incidents that we'll read about will be the death of Sarah, the negotiation of the price and the purchase of the burial plot at Machpelah near Hebron by Avraham, her actual interment, and then the second aspect being the finding, the location, the retrieval of a bride for the second generation of the covenant, beginning with Itak, being added to with Rivka, Rebecca, as most people in the Western world will know her. And I will hopefully give us a different perspective today, maybe a more ancient, a more beautiful, wise perspective of what Rivka and her purchase or her acquisition consists of, as opposed to some romantic Hallmark novel approach. What I believe we will see is that this is kinsman redemption. We'll talk about why I believe this is a factor of Abraham's kinsman redemption rather than some sort of a prototype of a divine romance that most people will see, and I'll let you deal with that as you wish. But we have a lot to discuss in these two main themes. And hopefully it will be a part of something that awakens in us a sense of our identity, a sense of who we are and where we came from, a sense of what we are, what is in us, why we don't give up, why we never quit, why we don't get distracted as easily as the rest of the world does, though we fight distraction every day, why we don't get upset by what they are upset by, why we don't get outraged by what they're outraged about, why we don't even laugh and get happy about what they laugh and get happy about, why we have a deeper sense of joy and a deeper sense of faith, hope, and love, as we talked about as part of the elements of the way last week. So the first thing we need to do is orient ourselves. If we're going to be walking into this strategic time of passing the baton, of changing the guard and carrying on, we kind of need to know where we've come from, because that will define to some degree where we're going to go. So where did we leave off last week? It's always a good question I like to ask us. I think as you get involved in the Torah cycle, the issue as you begin each, actually Saturday night at sundown, the cycle shifts every Saturday night at sundown, and all through the day of Sunday, the first day of the week, we begin this process of orienting ourselves to the new Parsha. And the question begins on Sunday, or the first day of the week, where did we come from and where are we going? So where did we leave off last week? Well, I'm going to talk generally and then we'll talk specifically. Generally, for the first 4 weeks of this Parsha cycle, this Torah cycle, we have been introduced to the season of testimonies. I want you to get that word, get that, testimonies. The testimonies. These are the testimonies. These are the essential foundational testimonies upon which our identity is based. Now, when you get to Psalm 119, and we talk a lot about Psalm 119 in this fellowship and in our discussions, the Rabbi's Son lessons talk a lot about Psalm 119. It is the psalmist love song many generations hence to these testimonies and to the other things that followed after these testimonies. The Holy One has chosen to introduce himself. The Creator of the universe has chosen to introduce himself to the world, not by giving them commands, not by giving them instructions, but by telling them stories. These are the stories. These are the testimonies. And this defines who we are, these testimonies. If we connect with this, we now know we have a self-image that is based upon essential identity as the Holy One has chosen for us to see it. So these stories that we read about Adam and Hava and about Cain and Hevel and about Seth and about the Tower of Babel and then about the calling of Avraham and his taking with him Sarah and even Lot and what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. These are the testimonies. These are the stories. And, in Psalm 119, one of the passages I'd like to read, it said, blessed, actually the Hebrew word is ashrei, which means going straight toward the target. Not so much blessed as getting money or blessing. Blessed, ashrei, are those who keep his testimonies. And the Hebrew word for keep is natsar. And natsar means like you have been assigned a watch. You have been assigned a certain time of day to be on watch, to be on guard, to take your post and your guard duty. Those who, blessed are those, ashrei, going straight forward toward the target without deviation, are those who keep the watch of the testimonies, who in their appointed season read them again, restore their connection to them, tie themselves back to these stories of the patriarchs. And so, blessed is he, Ashrei are those who natsar, who keep the testimonies, and who seek. Darash is the Hebrew word. Those who walk like treading after a leader or a master, who walk in their footsteps. Those who darash him with their whole heart. Bechol lev. We'll see that phrase throughout Scripture. Both their whole heart. Bechol lev. We're going to see how the way always involves bechol lev, the whole heart, the whole, not just a fragment of it, not half-hearted. The whole heart is being recalled forth and required. So Psalm 119:2 tells us about these testimonies. The next phrase in Psalm 119:3, I just encourage you. I'm not even going to tell you what it says. I want to so tease you that you will go and see what Psalm 119:3 says. So you'll know why I'm giving you Psalm 119:2. if you understand why these testimonies are important and the impact they're supposed to have upon your life, then I'll just let you read Psalm 119:3 and the consequences of these things becoming, you taking your watch for these testimonies. I'll let that happen. Now, I want to remind you that we're in the season of the testimonies. Let's absorb it. Let's take it in. Let's breathe deep. Let's let the whole revelation stream of these testimonies wash over us. This is who we are. This is why we're here. This is all about the essence of the call upon our lives, the purpose for which we are on this earth at such a time as this. And so these are the foundational patriarchal narratives, our family stories. If you've ever been around the old folk, as we used to call them when I was a kid, the old folk, they'd sit around and they'd tell these stories. And we were kids listening to them, sometimes with our eyes wide open, our mouth wide open, other times shaking our head and scratching our ears. We just like, really? I mean, but these are our patriarchal narratives, our family stories. This is not something that happened to some other people a long time ago. This is designed to be in your psyche, in your persona, who you are. These are our stories. And so these are the patriarchal narratives, the family stories, and these are supposed to shape our God consciousness and our worldview. These stories, these testimonies of what happened with our ancestors, with our forefathers, with our patriarchal covenant predecessors, these things are supposed to shape our worldview. Not what the world tells you, not what science tells you, not what medicine tells you, not what the religious world tells you. These stories are to be the source of your sense of worldview. And all beyond that, your sense of God consciousness and your sense of purpose. So we have this idea of shaping your God consciousness through these testimonies, reminding us of our purpose on earth through these testimonies, and framing our identity, who we are, and our self-image and our self-projection through by virtue of these testimonies. All right. Now I want to talk more specifically. I said that was the general. We're in the season of the testimonies. But beyond that specifically, we are at a very critical point in the season of the testimonies. We're at the specific testimony of Akhidati Itak, the binding of Itak, the aftermath of the Moriah experience. If you don't have the Moriah experience as part of your resume, if you have not been there with Uncle Avraham, if you've not walked up there with our father Itak, if you've not stood in the position in the sense that you have actually, this is your story, not just their story, then you will not be able to flow fully in the Bekol heart, the Bekol lev, the whole heart aspect of following in the way. We need to walk with Avraham, and we need to walk with Yitzhak up that mountain of Moriah. So we're at the specific time, the strategic time, in the testimonies, the testimony of Akhidati Itak. Now, last week we read at the end, we read these words. Avraham, this is after they've climbed the mountain, and after Yitzhak has been bound to the altar. Avraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. Remember, you're Avraham and you're Yitzhak, because this is both your histories. But the angel of the Holy One, there was an intervention. The angel of the Holy One called to him from heaven and said, Avraham, Avraham. And so he replied, Hineni, behold me, here I am. And the angel said, do not lay your hand on the lad, or do anything to him, for now I know, and I think it could also say you know, that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And then Avraham lifted his eyes and looked, and here's some exciting things we saw last week. When Avraham lifted his eyes, he was at the top of the crest of the Mount Moriah. There was nothing physically above his head. Nothing in the seen realm was above his head. But he lifted his eyes, and he looked above his head in this realm where there was nothing seen. And behold, he saw. And behold, and the Hebrew word is achar, which we translate, we don't know what to do with that word in English because people don't understand. If your English mindset, you don't understand that he's seeing in the unseen realm. And he's seeing in a realm that does not have time limiting it. And so often this is translated in English as he saw behind him. But that's not the right translation. Achar means in the realm that will follow. He sees in the unseen realm something that will follow. Something that will happen in the latter days. It's in the Achar. He sees Achar in the aftertime, in the time to come, was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. So he doesn't see what we would think of in the natural realm as seeing a ram caught in a thicket behind him. What he sees is through a veil that has been pierced, that has been split in two, between a seen realm and an unseen realm, in a very sacred piece of geography. At the Mount Moriah, he sees through the veil, and he sees past the issues of time. And actually, it was because he's outside the realm of time. It happened before the foundation of the world. That's why it says there was a lamb slain before the foundation of the world. It will happen again in the natural realm at this location, years and years and decades and centuries later. But the idea is that a ram is caught in the thicket. There is a strong one, Ayil. It's not necessarily physically a ram. It's Ayil. It's a strong one. The strong one will be caught by his horns in the thicket. There will be wood surrounding him. I'm going to leave that with you for a few moments. He says, Avraham lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, Achar was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And so Avraham went, he yalaked, he walked, he stepped through the veil, he encountered the eternal. He yalaked and he brought the ram that he saw out in the unseen realm into the seen realm. He brought the Ayil, the strong one, out of the unseen realm into the seen realm, into his world. He retrieved out of the holy, out of the place of the eternal, into the time. And he caused it to rise as an olah instead of his son. I would love to talk to you about the olah versus what you read in the English about burnt offerings and all that sort of stuff. Don't have time to do that today. We'll see it more in Leviticus when we get to Vayikra, when we get to that part of the Torah. So he makes him an olah instead of his son. And Avraham then did something. This is last week before we're getting to setting the stage for this week. Avraham called the name of the place. This is unusual. He gives a name to the place, which is a very unusual name. Now, most of us have learned that he called this place Jehovah Jireh. If you've read the English and been a child taught Jehovah Jireh, and we've been told that what that means is, and the Lord will provide. On the mountain, it says the Lord will provide. Unfortunately, that's a nice, wonderful theological way to approach it. It's just not what the Torah says. What the Bible says, what he said was, Adonai Yireh. It's a future tense. And it's in the future tense. He says, on the mountain of the Holy One, he will be seen. He will be manifested. He will be revealed. He will be exposed, just as he was to Avraham in that moment. So he will be revealed to all mankind. This is the message, not just about provision. The provision comes through the persona of who is going to be revealed. And Mashiach will be revealed in this beautiful way. He is the ram. He is the lamb slain before the foundation of the world. And he will bring this manifest revelation. So he says, Avraham called the name of the place Adonai Yireh, or Yireh Hashem. The Holy One will be Ra'ad. He will be seen, beheld, manifest. And as it is said today, to this day, in the mount of the Holy One, he will be Ra'ad. He will be seen. Well, this is the specifics of where we were left off with our self should be quivering a little bit inside, stunned inside with this revelation flow beginning to flow into our spirits. The idea that some man has transcended the veil, has stepped into the unseen realm and brought something to us from the unseen realm that is changing everything, that will change everything. Well, this process has been seen. And then we have, I call this the opening of the Moriah portal. There's a portal. Moriah, the mountain of Moriah, this physical sacred geography, this place in Israel, the place where Melchizedek was the king of Shalom, this king of Salem, as he's called. This place where he came from and where Avraham met him once before, now we're back to this place again, and this place is a portal. It is I call it the Moriah portal, and it connects the Hashemayim realm of the heavens with the Haaretz realm that we know of as the earth. It connects the two things that were divided in Genesis chapter 1. It reconnects that which was divided, separated in chapter 1, but only through a portal, and only to those who are willing to come to the portal at whatever cost there may be to the process. So the Moriah portal is open. It connects the Shemayim realm, Hashemayim realm with the Haaretz realm. Also, we could say the seen realm with the unseen realm. This is a critical moment of revelation, a critical moment of calling to you for your identity. Do you have access to the portal? Do you understand that there is a way to pass through this mortal world, to pass out in your natural life while you still live, and to go and retrieve things from the divine heavenly realm, the unseen realm, and bring them into play, into operation, to activity, and to function here in this realm? Well, this is the great Moriah portal connecting Hashemayim, the Haaretz, the seen and the unseen realm. The great point of access, ingress, and egress is now officially open. Strategic Initiative Phase 3 is ready to begin. The grand plan is ready to go forward, involving earning a whole generation of generations learning how to access the unseen realm through the portal that is opened on Moriah. Now, this portal between the realms will serve to the thorn and thistle realm that we live in. Remember in Genesis 3, we were sent, Adam and Hava, and mankind was sent into the thorn and thistle realm out of the Garden of Eden. Well, the Garden of Eden had in it a portal, a outflow, a wellspring of 4 rivers. The wellspring came forth, and 4 rivers issued forth out of and went to all the corners of the earth. Out of the Garden of Eden, a well, a center. And this was the source of all the life that went into all the world. So it is with this portal of Moriah, of Jerusalem. For us, Jerusalem, and the hill particularly of Moriah, is the ultimate point of the confluence of the rivers of Revelation. When you get to the book of Ezekiel and you start reading in chapter 40, you read about the river that flowed from underneath the throne. You read again in the book of Revelation about how the river came forth from the throne and crossed over the threshold. What was the throne? What was the threshold? It was the temple on Mount Moriah. And out of this spot, out of this sacred geography, out of this portal will come forth the water that will bring living water to the earth of all times. So this portal between the realms will serve the thorn and thistle realm that we live in. In this epoch, the Olam Hazeh, the world that is, as the wellhead of the 4 rivers did to the Garden of Eden. It will be the life source. It will be the pulsing river of life, of the living waters that will come forth for all of the earth. Now, I shouldn't forget that there was one more thing, as Columbo might have said, there was one more thing that was included in last week's Parsha at the very end. Sort of a nondescript phraseology, some language we wouldn't necessarily pay much attention to. After Mount Moriah, after the revelation flow, the portal was opened, and he saw what was coming out of the unseen realm into the seen realm and brought that forward. And there's a messenger comes to him. He's a messenger out of nowhere. I wonder if it happened on the mountain or when he got back down. But a messenger comes to Avraham with a message. Whoa, this should be important, we think. And then we look at it and say, it wasn't that important. Yes, it was. We're going to find out how important it was this week. But it didn't seem important to it because we'd just seen this great revelation of the Ayil, the strong one, that will be seen on the mountain. Here's a phraseology. Beginning with chapter 22, verse 20 through 24, I'm going to read basically most of it. Now, it came to pass after these things. That's a famous phrase you'll need to look for in the Bible. After these things, I encourage you, just remember that Bill said this. look for after these things. Now, it came to pass after these things that it was told Avraham, saying, so here's the messenger. Here's the message. Indeed, Milcah has also borne children to your brother Nachor. Okay, it's family history, family story, family lineage. Indeed, Milcah has also borne children to your brother Nachor, who, of course, Nachor is the surviving brother that's back in Padan Aram. And here's the listing of his 8 kids. 8 kids by Milcah through Nachor. Say, what does this got to do with the price of gold and china? We'll find out in a little bit. Indeed, Milcah has borne children to your brother Nachor, Uz, his firstborn. Now, if you know the book of Job, you know the land of Uz. Well, all right, I just want you to connect the stories, but at any rate, the first one is Uz, his firstborn, Buz, his brother Buzz, as we read it in Texan, Kemuel, the father of Aram, which is Syria, Chesed, which is an amazing name, Chazo, Pildash, Yidlaf, and Betuel. Now, get Betuel, because that's the last one mentioned. That's the 8th one. We're going to see him again. We're going to see a lot of him coming up. So these 8 children were born by Milcah to Nachor. These are what? Nephews? These are nephews of Avraham. And he goes further and tells us then, after it tells us about Betuel, the 8th of the kids, and Betuel begot Rivkah, a daughter. A daughter to his brother's son. Betuel begot Rivkah. Now, Rivkah is a Hebrew word which means not particularly flattering necessarily, unless you take it in a certain way. It means rope with a noose, the kind of a rope that has a noose on the end. You do that and you get arrested. You talk about ropes with nooses on them in America, and maybe for good reason. But here's the deal. Rivkah is a rope with a noose. She's an ensnarer. She's like you do it to trap a bird, or you do to trap an animal. You have a noose, and it's a snare. She is an ensnarer. That's the name that her father Betuel gave to her. Now you're going to see this play its way out with her progeny as we're going to get to know Rivkah, and have got her youngest son Yaakov. But you're going to see how these things flow. But he says, and Betuel begot Rivkah, the ensnarer. And these 8 Milcah bore to Nachor, Abraham's brother. Goes on and talks about a little more detail about a concubine and children that they had. And that ended our story last week. That's where we are. For some reason, the Torah, the writer of the Torah, the divine architect, decided we need to know that there were a bunch of new folks in a new generation up there in Padan Aram that were of Abraham's bloodline. And one in particular he wanted us to know about was named Rivkah. Now, I will tell you that I'm going to suggest to you that perhaps what we're seeing here with Rivkah, and why this story is told us at this point, before the servant is sent to find a bride for Itak, is because the whole story of finding a bride for Itak is not just about finding a bride for Itak. It is about kinsman redemption. It is about the fact that Avraham knows what kind of lifestyle, what kind of world Rivkah is in, and who her father is, who her brother probably is, and what kind of world that she is in. And as an act of kinsman redemption, he wants to redeem her. You say, why did he not want a Canaanite wife? Is it because he hates the Canaanites? The Canaanites? No. That's not the story. The story is it has really nothing to do with the Canaanites. It has nothing to do with the sons of Het and their daughters. It has to do with kinsman redemption. There is a member of his bloodline now, innocent, a young one, innocent, we'll find out, a young one in Padan Aram that needs to be redeemed and rescued into another lifestyle, another world. And so I would give you that as a background. Now here we are. Can we really pull off this blessing to every household and family on the face of the earth gig, and do it without Avraham and Sarai. Can we make this kingdom alliance we have now formed with the Creator of the universe cross-generational? I pray we can. Can we be the model across the generations? Now, this is actually, this crossing the generations, passing down from the torch from generation to generation, is the personal end game of the covenant. Not the community end game. We have a communal end game, a greater end game, but our personal end game is not to go to heaven when we die. That's a secondary goal. The primary goal is to pass the torch of this covenant and the calling of God and the ability to pass through the veil and bring the heavenly into the earthly to our children and our children's children and those who come after us of our household. And so this is important that we get this, or we will not think. We'll just think it's all about us and our spiritual development and our spiritual growth and maturity and our spiritual sense of importance in the world. He says, no, this is about whether you can do more than that. Can you pass this baton on? So we've learned about the Elohim signature. We've learned about the grand plan for redemption and restoration. We've learned about the strategic initiative that has been initiated. We've learned about the calling forth of the prototypes for this grand initiative, the strategic initiative. And we've been given only so far a broad brush mission briefing about the straight gate, how to go into it, start this process. And then we've been given the essential training programs. And what we're actually engaged in now are the essential training protocols of the way. Learning the way that Yeshua will talk about. Learning the way that Paul will say he follows the way. Learning this way, this is our protocols. And so it's called the derech, the narrow road, the pathway trod after the footsteps of another, of a master. And then we'll see this is the week of the handoff generation to generation. So, if you would, we're ready to begin. We've learned where we came from, where we ended, where we left off last week. It's time to stand, and we're going to begin to say our blessing of the Torah, and we're actually going to read from the Torah as far as see what it has to say to us this week. Our blessing of the house comes from Psalm 119. I was asked this week by our dear brother to give the citations from Psalm 119, and I will do that after we say the blessing and after we do the reading. But I will give those particular citations because everything I'm going to speak, everything we're going to speak together, hopefully, will come forth from Psalm 119 in that regard. The blessing of the house is this: open our eyes, O Holy One, our God, that we may see wondrous things from your Torah. For we are but strangers in the earth, so do not hide your commandments from us. Our souls cry out for your judgments at all times. How can a young man keep his way pure? By living according to your Torah. For your Torah, your word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. The entrance of your word brings light and understanding to even the simple. Make our spirits come alive so that they can praise you. And may your judgments be our help. Now the first reading comes from Genesis chapter 23. Now Sarah lived 100 years and 20 years and 7 years. These were the years of Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah. So Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Avraham came to mourn for Sarah and to cry for her, to weep for her. Then Avraham stood up before his dead, and he spoke to the sons of Chet, saying, I am a foreigner and a visitor among you. Give me property for a burial place among you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. And the sons of Chet answered Avraham and said to him, Shema us, hear us, my Lord. You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our burial places. None of us will withhold from you his burial place, that you may bury your dead. And then Avraham stood up and he bowed himself before the people of the land and the sons of Het. And he spoke with them and he said, if it is your wish, your desire, that I bury my dead out of my sight, hear me, shema me, and meet with Ephron, the son of Zochar, for me, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he has, which is at the end of this field. Let him give it to me at the full price, as property for a burial place among you. And now Ephron dwelt among the sons of Het, and Ephron the Hethite answered Avraham in the presence of the sons of Het, all who entered at the gate of his city, saying, no, my lord, shema me, hear me. I give you the field, and the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of the sons of my people. I give it to you. Bury your dead. Then Avraham bowed himself again before the people of the land. And he spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, saying, if you will give it to me, please hear me, please shema me. I will give you the money for the field. Take it from me, and I will bury my dead there. And Ephron answered Avraham, saying to him, my lord, listen to me, shema me. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between you and me? Go bury your dead. And Avraham listened. He shemad to Ephron. And Avraham weighed out the silver for Ephron, which he had named in the hearing of the sons of Het. 400 shekels of silver, currency of the merchants. And so the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, which was before Mamre, the field and the cave which was in it, and all the orchard trees that were in the field, which were within the surrounding borders, were deeded to Avraham as a possession in the presence of the sons of Het, before all who went in the gate of the city. And after this, Avraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah, before Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And so the field and the cave that is in it were deeded to Avraham by the sons of Het as a property and a burial place. Chapter 24. And Avraham was now Zachin, gray, well advanced in years. And the Holy One had blessed Avraham in all things. And so Avraham said to the eldest servant of his house, who ruled over all that he had, please put your hand under the tenderest of places, and I will make you swear by the Holy One, the God of heaven, and the God of earth, the God of the Hashemayim, and the God of the Haaretz, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaani, among whom I dwell, that you will... Excuse me. Technology is wonderful. Until... that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of Het, daughters of the Canaani, among whom I dwell, but you will go to the country and to my family, to my country and to my family, and you will take a wife for my son Itak. And the servant said to him, perhaps the woman will not be willing to follow me to this land. Must I take your son back to the land from which you came? Avraham said to him, beware that you do not take my son back there. The Lord God of heaven, the Holy One God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land, my land and my family, and who spoke to me and swore to me, saying, to your descendants I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you will take a wife for my son from there. And if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be released from this oath. Only do not take my son back there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of Avraham, under the secret tender place of Avraham, his master, and swore to him concerning this matter. And he took 10 of his master's camels and departed, for all his master's goods were in his hand. He arose, and he went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. Amen. You may be seated. Now, as I promised before I get into the details of the text and the implications for the Derek Hashem, the Derek of the way of the Holy One, and the strategic initiative of God, and the grand plan of redemption and restoration, let me just tell you about these five different sections of Psalm 119 that we chose for our blessing of the house. It starts with Psalm 119, 18 through 20. That's open our eyes, O Holy One, that I may see wondrous things. Then it goes to Psalm 119, 9, reverses time a little bit. How can a young man keep his way pure? Then it goes to Psalm 119, 105, Psalm 119, 130, and Psalm 119, 175. For those who had questions about where in the psalm that was, you can maybe write those down or look back at this video later and come back and write it down if you wish to do that at that time, so you'll know where we're getting this blessing that we keep speaking over the reading of the Torah. Now, changing of the guard. You know, it's one thing for a person to walk with the Holy One for a few weeks, a few years, a few decades. And it's wonderful, it's a great experience to have a personal relationship with the Creator of the universe. It is another thing altogether to have transgenerational impact. It is another thing altogether to be able to pass the baton and keep your focus on passing the baton rather than doing other works that you might be trying to do to make your importance seem more important. To focus your attention and your efforts and your energies on that which the covenant calls for, which is to pass the baton to your children and your children's children. A torch that goes from hand to hand until it reaches around the globe. Last year I sang to you that verse from Mattathias' song that I wrote for my kids. A torch to pass from hand to hand until it reaches around the globe. Now that's the idea. That's what the grand plan involves, more than your personal ministry, your more personal activity, your personal sense of fulfillment in the spiritual realm. Focus always needs to be upon moving this generationally. And if you have physical children, your own children and others, and if you don't have children of your own in biological sense, then there are still others that are available to be influenced by you. For instance, Lot was influenced by Avraham. Rivka will be influenced by Avraham, and so we get this process of doing so. So it's another thing altogether to learn how to pass the baton, the torch of the Torah, the torch of the covenant plan, and the impact to bless every household and family on the face of the earth, which is what we are called. That's the grand strategic initiative. It's another thing to pass that baton from generation to generation. Now, what does it mean to pass the torch, and why is that our big focus? That's the critical thing, is that we are building a counterculture that must survive generation after generation. There must always be an alternative way of life offered, way of worldview, way of perspective, way of handling and controlling emotions, way of shalom, a way of peace, a way of what? Faith, hope, and love that we talked about last week as being the cornerstones of the way. This is the key factor, is learning how to build this foundation that others want to walk on and can walk on. This is more important than any of the little things that we may do that we think are important. The disciplines and the disciplines are for a reason, so that we can pass this on to our children and our children's children. So we have this calling upon our lives that goes beyond. We learn that we're going to do this. We're going to continue to see this blessing of mankind, blessing of every family that he promised to Avraham, take place even when Sarah is dead, when even later in the parsha when Avraham has died, because he will die also in this process. So we have this event take place. It appears that a very little time has passed between the binding of Akhidati and the great experience of passing through the veil and bringing back that which was in the unseen realm to the seen realm by Avraham. Perhaps the next day, we don't know how long it took, but there was a certain short period of time when Avraham was riding the crest of this great revelation. He and Yitzhak both were, can you imagine? Well, hopefully you can imagine what it feels like to touch the unseen realm and how that brings the sense of hope and purpose to you. So it wasn't long, maybe a day, maybe a few days, but somehow after they come back and they get this messenger about this person that's been born in the land of Nahor, from the lineage of Nahor, the brother, and the next thing they find out is they go and they find Hebron. At Hebron, Sarah has passed away. We aren't told what happened to her. We aren't told she was sick. We don't know if an animal, a wild animal, a predator got her. We don't know if she was killed in some sort of a raid. We don't know if she died of illness. We don't know if she had a heart attack. We don't know what happened to her. The cause of death is never the important thing. It was her time. Death has so many traumatic things attached to it that we remember the traumatic things and not the timing and the reason for which the death occurred. And the Holy One said it was Sarah's time, and he called her forth, and Sarah was gone. So by the time Avraham and Yitzhak returned to her, perhaps they passed through Beersheba first. It appears that they went to their camp at Beersheba, but Beersheba is many kilometers from Hebron, which is where Sarah was, and where Sarah was found dead. What do you do when you're matriarch? What do you do when the love of your life? What do you do when you're mother? What do you do when they just dead and you can't control it? You can't fix it. You can't bring them back. You can't make anything happen. How does this affect your walk? How does this affect your covenant responsibility? How does it affect your relationship, your worldview, your God concept? How does it affect everything? Well, we have some in the room that know how this does, how a drain, a pull it is, a pain it is, how hard it is. But the key is to transcend it, to overcome it, to walk through it. But it is a process, not an event. You don't claim it and name it and claim it and take it. You walk it out and you learn from it. So here's Avraham, and I hope you heard the poignancy. Whenever he comes and he finds that Sarah is mut, she's not there, she's gone. It says he had to make he had to get to that. He had to come. He had to mourn for her. He had this something transcended in his spirit, his flesh. All those things begin to reek, to break forth in some kind of mourning protocol. And what it looked like, we're not even told. But then it says that then he wept. He came to the realization. He arrived at the idea that she was mut. He mourned for the fact that she was mut, and then eventually he wept. He cried. He let physical tears of flesh flow over that fact. Now, in that process, he didn't stop, though. He didn't go and stop. He didn't quit doing what he does. As a matter of fact, he never lost sight of, even for the shortest instant, he never lost sight of what he did. The first thing he does is go have a conversation with the sons of Het about a place to bury her. Now, last year, if you get a chance to look back on last year's version of this same study, Parsha Chayei Sarah, the week of Sarah last week, I told you a lot about the legends, the ancient Hebrew legends that try to explain a lot of this and make sense of a lot of the process. Now, part of the legend was about the cave of Machpelah and how it's double nature. It had a portal between heaven and earth. It had one part, and as a matter of fact, it was believed to be the burial place of Adam and Hava. And in the story, it actually, Avraham, whenever the visitors came from heaven, came in chapter 18, and they came and he decided to kill the fatted calf, for them, according to legend, he went looking for the fatted calf. And the fatted calf ran away. And it ran all the way into the wilderness in the Negev. And he followed it. He chased the calf because he wanted to provide this fatted calf for the visitors, divine visitors, to his tent. And so he chases, and it goes, and he sees the calf dive down, go into and hide into a cave. This was the cave of Machpelah. And as Avraham chases the calf into the cave, as he gets into it in the dark and he can't see, then suddenly he sees way up ahead in the cave, he sees a light. But you don't find a light in a cave. But he sees a light, and he sees beside an entrance later, a deeper entrance in the deeper part of the cave, he sees an angel with a flaming sword. The flaming sword, the torch that is the eternal Ner Tamid, the light, the eternal light. And it's an angel with a flaming sword. And on the other side of the flaming sword lays horizontally the bodies of Adam and Hava. And the Garden of Eden behind them. The pathway, the Garden of Eden. And so this cave in the Hebrew legend is depicted as being basically the portal. I mentioned the portal of Moriah. This is the portal of Machpelah. And the portal of Machpelah talks about the fact that there is another place. There are many places upon the earth that we have access to the unseen realm. Well, that's the whole idea of the story. And so we have Avraham finding this cave. And so according to the Hebrew legends, what he was doing was not just negotiating a burial plot with the sons of Het. He was buying the pearl of great price. As Yeshua would talk about later, the parable of the kingdom of heaven is like a man who finds a pearl of great price hidden in a field. And will he not then go and sell everything he has and spend every ounce of money he has to go purchase the field in which is the pearl of great price? So we have this portal, and we have this imagery being restricted out. When Yeshua was talking about this, the people in the Hebrew world that he knows are saying, Machpelah, this is the story, I get this. Will we do what Abraham did? Will we do the works of Abraham? Will we, when we find that which is the divine, the eternal, the portal between heaven and earth, and where we can actually touch the heavenly, the unseen realm, and bring it into our world? When we find this portal, will we sacrifice all, as Abraham did at Mount Moriah, and as he did again at Machpelah? So whenever we have this other incident take place in this negotiation, and the negotiation is going to wind up with Avraham calling for for Itak or whoever, and they bring the chest full of silver, and Avraham is going to count out one at a time shekel coins of silver, 400. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You said 400. I'm not negotiating your price. It's exorbitant. I don't care. I don't care how much it is. This is the pearl of great price. I'm purchasing the pearl of great price. This is the imagery, 400 shekels. Now, it's interesting the terms of the negotiation. Why are we told every little line that was spoken by Ephron the Hittite and by Avraham? Because every line seemed to start with this phrase, Shema me. Listen to me. Listen to me. Now, here's this. Listen to me. No, what is happening? What is he trying to tell us? What is the Torah telling us about Shema me? No, Shema me. The Shemaing is not just listening. Shemaing means move from where you are closer to where I am in response to what I say. So this is a negotiation. This is what Shemaing is when we Shema the Holy One. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Elohei, wherever you are, B'nai Israel, get closer. Come to me. Come closer. This is what, and the negotiation is exactly that. Shema me. No, Shema me. And as we're saying Shema me, what's happening? The distance between us is getting closer. You ever bargain for something at a shuk at a open air market anywhere? I'll pay you $5. No. This is worth $50. It's not worth $50. I'll give you $7.50. We're getting closer. We're shemaing, okay? This is the idea of learning the kingdom ideas of shemaing. Now, this is involving our relationship with the Holy One. Do you know how to shema? Do you know the protocols? Do you know the pathways of shemaing? Because this is where we're going to get into in prayer, right? If you think he has to come to you, you have a prayer idea. You have a prayer mindset. And you want him to come to you? Remember this discussion? No, shema me. Shema me. No, shema me. And the shema me in the process of coming together and finding the same tone. It's like you have whenever you start I start on my guitar, and it's been sitting for 3 weeks, or 4, or 10 in these days, and I want to tune it, and I go string by string. Well, I play the note that I want the string to be, the open string to be, and I play the open string, and it isn't there. It's flat, it's sharp. So no, I've got to take and I've got to adjust that string tension so that I can bring it to the same tension as the note I'm playing, whether it be on a piano or whether it be on the string above it. I've got to come through this process of tuning, shemaing. I'm shemaing those notes together, bringing them to where they're together, and actually only one is moving. Only one this is the idea of shemaing. Do you know the kingdom protocol? If you don't know the kingdom protocols of shemaing, it will be very difficult to pass the torch. Because you will try to remain where you are, and your children and your children's children will see that you are stuck in your ways, you're a heart of your heart, you are stuck in the pathways, you never adjust, you never tenderize, you never surrender, you never submit to the Creator's plan. You never grow. You never learn. You're stuck. This shemaing process is part of our growth protocols. So the shemaing, shema me, no shema me. And eventually come, and Avraham is really not going to budge, but Ephron will. And so he buys the plant for 400 shekels of silver. Wow, outrageous, pearl of great price, a lot of money, a lot of expenditure. And then they bury Sarah. And immediately what happens after they bury Sarah is Avraham calls his servant. Now, we're not told his name. I mean, most of us instinctively understand that it's probably Eliezer, the Syrian guy, the one he said, that guy's going to be my heir, back in Genesis 15. He's been with him a long time, and he's ahead of all this stuff, all this property. So it's not just some slave of his. This is his best friend, his confidant, this is the best man of his wedding. This would be whoever. This was the most important friend that he had. And I think a lot of times we see the word servant. We misunderstand that. Well, I won't go into that. People get all fired up about that. So he calls the servant, and he says to him, I have a quest for you. I have this great thing for you. I want you to go to find a bride for my son Itak. Now, Itak is probably late 20s this particular, maybe, we don't know how old he is. He's no spring chicken yet. And so he comes and he says, I want you to go to the land of my brother Nahor. Remember, we just got the message. We just got the download. We just got the revelation. There is a woman, there's a girl named Rivka. She's a rope with a noose. She's an ensnare, but she's your kin. And she's in a bad world, the world that you were called out of. So he says, I want you to go back to the land from which I was called out of. The Holy One called me out of. And I want you to go and bring back a girl. Doesn't mention her name. Doesn't say it's Rivka. Maybe he didn't know it was Rivka. I don't know. But anyway, he's going to get Rivka. Rivka. And so he sends the servant. He said, put your hand under my most tender place. Read it thigh if you want to. That's your business. He said, and it's a very intimate process of, this is so important to me, so critical to me. And so the servant says, well, yeah, okay, I'll do this, but, here's the deal. What you're saying to me is, you want me to go 500 miles and find a bunch of people at a village that hasn't seen you or me, at least in a generation, and you want me to find the girl that is the one that's supposed to be designed for your son Itak, the new matriarch. I've watched what you do. I've watched how you impact the world. And your family, whoa, changes everything. And so I'm supposed to find some girl who meets that qualification, and then I'm supposed to go to her and say, I want you to go 500 miles through rough terrain, highwaymen, and all sorts of dangers and hostiles. And I want you to go 500 miles with me, and I want you to get married and bear children to a man you've never met. Are you in for this? And he says, what if the woman won't do this? I mean, you're asking a lot, Avraham. I mean, this is... Now, I could go into a lot of detail about what has happened to marriage in the intervening centuries. And courtship and betrothal and dating and all the things that have entered into. And beyond that, well, the stuff that people do. But this is a pathway. It says, in the kingdom, in the covenant, we need to train our children not to go doing the things the world is doing. Not to try to find your spouse, your mate, your loved one those ways. There are higher ways. It is something from the eternal realm we're trying to draw, something from the spiritual realm. We need to do spiritual things and follow protocols. Well, I'll leave that alone because many of you would get upset about that. But so the servant says to Avraham, what if she won't come? And Avraham doesn't even blink. He didn't say, I never thought of that. He says, no, the Holy One who called me out of my father's house. How could he have this confidence? The Holy One who called me forth from my father's house and my land and my country, he will send an angel before you. He will send an angel before you, and he will accomplish the work. And I'll tell you how convinced I am of this. If she won't come, then you're absolved from this oath. Just count it as nothing, and we're all good, and all that's good. He said, this is how sure Avraham was that was going to happen. So we begin to see, and if we get into the story, we see some amazing things take place in chapter 24. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels, and he departed, for all his master's goods were in his hand. And he arose. Now, I talked to you about the pearl of great price being the land at Machpelah, the 400 shekels worth of land. I talked about being the son Yitzhak, the pearl of great price that he took to Moriah. He understands pearls of great price. And so he doesn't spare anything. He says he gave 10 camels and everything that he owned, along with one servant, through that same 500-mile road of bad terrain, horrible highwaymen, horrible hostiles. He sends one old servant and everything that he owns. If that's not ripe for a pirate raid, I don't know what is. But he sends it. And he says, 10 of his master's camels departed, for all his master's goods were in his hand. He arose, and he went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. And he made his camels kneel down outside the city by a well of water at evening time, the time when women go out to draw water. So what time of the day it is? It's evening time. It's the sunset, the time when women go out to draw water. And then the servant says, O Holy One, God of my master Avraham, please give me success this day and show kindness, hesed, to my master Avraham. And so we have this amazing thing. We're talking about passing a baton to another generation. Unbeknownst to us, hidden from us, is the fact that he's already passed the baton. to a servant, to his friend. He has passed this baton, and what happens is that the servant can speak as if in the name of Avraham, because he's been following this pathway for this time. He has bought into the deal. O Holy One, God of my master Avraham, give me success this day and show kindness, hesed, to my master Avraham. Behold, here I stand by the well of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Now let it be that the young woman to whom I say, he throws out what we call a fleece. Please let down your pitcher. The one that I say, please let down your pitcher that I may drink. And she responds, drink, and I will also give your camels a drink. May she be the one you have appointed, or she will be the one you have appointed for your servant Itak. And by this I will know that you will have shown kindness to my master. That's a pretty bold prayer. Just as it was crazy to the servant when he first heard it to say, this woman's going to come back with you, though she doesn't know why she's going, where she's going, or who she's going to meet or marry. So it is, the servant now says, okay, let's do something really strange. Whenever I see a girl come forth and I ask her to give me a drink of water, and she says, not only will I give you a drink of water, I'll water your 10 thirsty camels, then I'll know. Now, I've given some analogies in previous years about a little girl filling up 10 18-wheelers with diesel fuel on her credit card. But I'll leave that one for you. It's amazing. It's a lot of work. And so it happened, before he would finish speaking, that behold, Rivkah, who was born to Bethuel, this is the girl we talked about, right? The very one that the messenger told Avraham was going to be there. That Rivkah, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out to her with her pitcher on her shoulder. Now the young woman was very beautiful to behold. A virgin, no man had known her. And she went down to the well, filled her pitcher, and came up. She's going to take the water back to her household, back to her family. Hygiene, water to drink, water to clean with, water to cook with. That's what you do every day. You go to the well, you bring the water back. She's not going to meet her future husband or the servant of the father of her future husband, but she comes up from the water with the well. She's carrying the well on her head, and the servant ran to meet her and said, please let me drink a little water from your pitcher. So she said, drink, my lord. And she let her pitcher down to her hand. Now you're talking about 50 pounds worth of water sitting on the little girl's head, 5 gallons or so, the big jug you can handle. And this is no small feat. She's no weakling. She pulls down this 50-pound of water, and she gently manipulates it in such a way that he gets a drink. He just slosh it all over him. It's difficult to maneuver that in a very strategic way. She brings this down, and she proves that she's very agile with what she does. She gives him a drink. And when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw water for your camels also until they have finished drinking. Now, by the way, I think I did tell you last year or years before, a camel who's been on a journey, camel stores water in their body. And an empty camel will drink 25 gallons of water. Now, if you're talking about one pitcher weighing 50 pounds and having 5 gallons, that's 4 to 5 per camel. Multiplied by 10, we're talking about 40 to 50 times she's going to go down and hold 50 pounds down and bring it back up and pour it in the trough. This is a lot of work. This is a pearl of great price. And she does it. She quickly emptied her pitcher in the trough, ran back to the well to draw water, and drew water for all his camels. And the man, wondered at her. In the King James, I think it says, and he stood astonished. He gaped at her with his mouth wide open, like it happened. Not only did it happen, look at her. Look at the grace. Look at the strength, but yet the sweet strength, the caring, the service, the willingness to submit, the willingness to do this for a complete stranger for no benefit. Well, to serve. And so he wondered at her, he gazed at her, he gaped at her, remained silent so as to know whether the Lord had made his journey prosperous or not. Remained silent so as to know whether the Holy One had made his journey prosperous or not. The fleece is met. The girl is incredible. The possibilities were 1 in 4,000,000. But somehow or other, it's happened, and he's standing there waiting to see whether the Lord had made his journey prosperous or not. And verse 22, so it was when the camels had finished drinking, then the man took a golden ring weighing a half a shekel and 2 bracelets for her wrist weighing 10 shekels of gold. And he had them in his hand. It doesn't say he gave it to her at this particular stage, but it does say he will give it to her. She's going to have it later. But he takes the gold, and she sees the gold. Now, for the first time, she sees the gold. She sees gold ring, maybe a nose ring, and she sees these 2 bracelets. It's a hive. Now, don't have time to talk to you about the first river, or the rivers of Eden, and what's the one thing they mention that they went to? The gold, the hive. Anyway, we see this gold. And he says to her, whose daughter are you? Mibat. Whose daughter are you? Please tell me, is there room in your father's house for us to lodge? Is there a place for us to lodge? And she said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, Milcah's son, whom she bore to Nahor. It fits the actual language that we saw earlier in the message to Avraham. And moreover, she said to him, we have both straw and feed enough, fodder. We have straw and fodder enough, and room to lodge. And then the man bowed his head, and he did something very, very interesting. This is it's actually the second time, first time we see it happening. First time we just heard it talked about. This word that we translate as worship. Now, whole theologies have been built around this word in English. The English word worship. But it comes from a Hebrew word, which just means shakah, which means to bow yourself, to prostrate yourself, to totally surrender, to empty yourself. It's not about music, and it's not about drum beats, and it's not about dancing, although all those things can be part of it. That is not the story. The story is the emptying of self and the bowing, laying in prostrate form before. So this old man falls flat on his face. Where have we seen this before? Avraham. Back when the visitors came. He ran to meet them, and he fell flat on his face, even though it's maybe the 3rd day after his circumcision. So we see this, he falls on his face, and not only does he fall to his face, and does he begin to empty himself, he begins to just talk out loud to an unseen friend. Now, if you ever have your sons or daughters come home and they bring this person into your house, and the other person starts talking to an unseen friend, an invisible friend, you may think he's kind of weird. She's kind of weird. But in this situation, the servant falls down in front of the girl and starts babbling to an invisible friend, which to Rivka would be an invisible friend. To you and I would be an invisible friend if we didn't know who he was talking to. And so he says, Baruch, blessed be, Baruch atah Adonai, blessed be you, the Holy One our God, of my master Avraham, who has not forsaken his hesed, and his mercy, and his emet, his truth, toward my master. As for me, being on the way, the Holy One has led me to the house of my master's brother. If that didn't freak out the girl, nothing would. But she runs, she goes to her mother's household. She tells her mother's household all these things again. But Rebekah had a brother. Everybody ready to hiss and boo, okay? This is like Purim, when we start mentioning Haman. Okay? Shh, boo. He had a brother named Laban. Boo! Why are we doing these strange things in this process? Because Laban in Hebrew, is this antithesis, this anti-Messiah, this anti of everything covenant that we're going to see. And he's going to be a pattern and a prototype, and we're going to watch his methodologies, watch his behavior patterns, watch his strategies, and we'll see how the anti-Messiah does what he always does. And so Lavan is there. She has a brother whose name is Lavan. And Lavan ran out to the man by the well. So it came to pass, so it came to pass when he saw the nose ring. When Lavan saw the nose ring meant something different to Lavan than it did to Rivkah. So he sees the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's wrists. And when he heard the words of his sister Rivkah saying, thus the man spoke to me, that he, Lavan, went to the man where he stood by the camels at the well. And he said, come in, O blessed of the Holy One. He uses the covenant name. Come in, O blessed of the Holy One. Why do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and a place for the camels. Well, the first thing we learn about the anti-Messiah through Lavan is he's a name dropper. He's a divine name dropper. Watch out for divine name droppers. One who knows him doesn't need to talk to him, doesn't need to spell the name out, because he talks and the very presence moves with the voice. And so he says, when you see someone throwing around the sacred name, look, they may not understand this, but they're walking in tune with the anti-Messiah. Because what you do, you keep throwing the name out. It becomes irrelevant to you. It becomes unimportant to you. It becomes like just another word to you, just another name to you. And this is what people do, whether you use the sacred four-letter name or whether you use the titles of God or Father. Or be careful. Learn that the adversary knows that name well, and he can manipulate you by using it to make you think this is spiritual stuff. This is real stuff, and to distract you and guide you away. The people who most use the name are the people who are the most deceptive and most dangerous to your walk. Now, this is a critical factor, even in any circle that you wish. Lord, God, Father, watch careful. These are the first trick, is that it gets your attention by dropping a sacred name. And he says, why do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and a place for the camels. Can I just say this to you? No, he didn't. You know better than this. You know who prepared the house? You know who prepared the place for the camels? The little girl who got the water. This is the adversary always claims credit for what other people do and acts like it's his thing. Now, he has the power, he has the authority. This is like the conversation that the adversary had with Yeshua. You know, I can give you all this. No, you can't. No, you're a liar. You're full of yourself. You don't have the authority to do that, but you're claiming the authority to do all these things that you can't do. Well, this is what Lavan did. Lavan isn't even the head of the household, right? There is a head of the household. It's Bethuel. Bethuel is the head of the household. Bethuel should be out there having this conversation. Bethuel should be negotiating the bride price, not the brother. Who is this interloper? Who is this one who shows up out of nowhere and begins to insert himself into this equation? So he goes on and says, for I prepared a house and a place for the camels. And then the man came to the house, and he unloaded the camels, and he provided straw and feed for the camels. Who did? The man, the servant. And water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Food was set before him to eat, but he said, I will not eat until I have told about my errand. Here's the other thing about the adversary, the antithesis, the boo, the hiss, the Lavan. He will always try to get you to think about food. To take your mind, put your mind on something of the sensual realm, something of the physical realm. Make these stones bread. Always find a way to get your focus on the material, the temporal, anything but the spiritual. Anything but the real mission for what you're there. Focus on physical. So he says, he puts food, and the servant says, no, we're not going to have food. I'm not here for food. We'll have food later if need be, but I want to get my mission out front. This is priority. This is our covenant way. Stay focused on the mission. Get your mission priorities out there and keep focused on them. So he says, I will not eat until I have told about my errand. And so he says, speak on. And so the servant said, I am Avraham's servant. The Holy One has blessed my master greatly, and he has become great. He has given him flocks and herds. Now, the focus is now shifting to the Holy One. He's testifying about what the Holy One has done. The Holy One has blessed my master greatly. He's not even telling the story of how great how great Itak is. He's not telling how great Avraham is. He's telling how great the Holy One is. This is the way you counter the adversary. The Holy One has blessed my master greatly. He has become great. He has given him flocks and herds and silver and gold and male and female servants and camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old, and to him he has given all that he has. And now my master made me swear, saying, you will not take a wife from me, for my son, from the sons of Canaanites in whom I dwell, but you are to go to my father's house and my family and take a wife for his son. He tells the whole story. He goes on. And then verse 42, and this day I came to the well, and I said, O Holy One, God of my master Avraham, if you will prosper the way in which I go, behold, I stand at the well of water. And he tells a story about what his prayer was and what he asked for, the fleece he laid out. Verse 45, but before I had finished speaking in my heart, before I'd even finished speaking in my heart, much less in my mouth, there was Rivka coming out with her pitcher on her shoulder. And she went down to the well, and she drew water. And I said to her, please give me a drink. And she made haste and let her pitcher down from her shoulder and said, drink, and I'll give your camels a drink also. So I drank, and she gave the camels a drink also. And I asked her, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son. Didn't mention you, Lavan. I am the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, who Milcah bore to him. And so I put the nose ring on her nose and the bracelets on her wrist, and I bowed my head, and I worshiped the Holy One. I bowed myself and emptied myself before the Holy One. And I blessed the Holy One, the God of my master Avraham, who had led me in the way of truth, Derech Hashem, the way of Emet, and the way to take the daughter of my master's brother for his son. And now if you will deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me. And if not, tell me. And I'll turn not to the right or to the left. But Laban and Bethuel answered and said, the thing comes from the Holy One. We cannot speak to you, either good or bad. That's how you silence the adversary. You just don't give him a chance to say his piece. You don't give him a chance to distract you with his thing. You stay focused on the mission, the directive, the plan. And so it came to pass. He said, here is Rivka, before you take her and go, let her be your master's son's wife, as the Holy One has spoken. Now, the next thing that happens is the next sign that you know is you're in the presence of the anti-covenant person, Lavan. And they come up and say, well, when can she go? Well, that's not yet. Not yet. It's not yet. It's not time yet. We want to send her off right. We want to. You hear these all the time. This is when they want to send you off. They want to send people off. They want to delay. They want to delay. They want to delay. Well, that's when you realize you're in the presence of the anti. They want to talk about it. They don't want to do it. They want to talk. They don't want to do it. They want to talk. They don't want to do it. And so he goes on and he basically gets them to agree. He eventually calls Rebekah, verse 458. They call Rebekah, Rivka, and say to her, will you go with this man? Nobody in their right mind would dream she would say yes. She says yes. I will go. Matter of fact, get me out of this house as fast as possible. Well, she didn't say that. I added that in there. This is the way in which she responded tells me she had all she wanted of Lavan and his ways. She had everything. She had been waiting all of her life to be called forth, to find an out, a way out, a deliverance, a deliverer, a hope. So it wasn't about a bridegroom she never met. She didn't go for the sake of the bridegroom. She went for the sake of the freedom. And so she went. She says, I'll go. And so they went away. So they sent away Rebekah, her sister, and her nurse, and Avraham's servant, and and Avraham's servant, his men. And they blessed Rivkah, said to her, our sister, may you become the mother of thousands of 10,000s. And may your descendants possess the gates of those who hate them. And Rivkah and her maids arose. They rode on the camels. They followed the man. And so the servant took Rivkah, and he departed. And about that time, Itak came out from the land of Beer Lahai Roi, the land where he will be seen, the land of shepherd's vision. And he comes to dwell in the south. And he's out it says that he was out to meditate in the field. Out to meditate in the field in the evening. There's so much to unpack in this verse, and there's so much to unpack in the idea of why he was out and what he was doing, and what meditating in the field might look like. I really don't have time to outlay that for you, but I want you to understand that later on we're going to hear things like, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the Torah of the Holy One, and in his Torah he meditates day and night. Now, this is not transcendental meditation, not some far eastern discipline. What this is learning how to bring the wisdom of the testimonies and the stories and the commandments and the judgments of God before your mind like an animal chews its cud. To bring it forth at all times, to be there, to be able to be thinking on it and focusing on it, because what comes in will come out. What you're thinking about will be what you talk about. So this idea of bringing this forth. So he's going into the field in the evening. He has a discipline. He has a musar in Hebrew. The idea of a program, a protocol to be able to focus every day on what the Holy One has done and what the Holy One has said and what the testimonies are and the realities of holy spiritual things, and he has a way of bringing that into the present. Well, that's what we are called to do. We are called to have this way, this meditation way, not a transcendental Eastern religion, a form of actual biblical Hebrew approach to keeping the words and the mindset of the Holy One in the forefront. So he meditates out. She's out there. He's meditating in the field in the evening, and he lifts his eyes and looks, and there are camels coming. And then Rivkah, verse 64, Rivkah lifted her eyes. And if you read the Hebrew text, you sit there and you start chuckling. Because what happens next is not what happens in the English. In English it says she dismounted her camel. In the Hebrew it says when she saw him, she fell off her camel. She didn't come for him. But boy, when she got him, when she saw him. Now, why was the thrill? Was he just a good-looking dude? Why was Sarah beautiful? Was she beautiful in the physical sense that we think about? She was old. What was beautiful about Sarah? What was beautiful about Itak? What made Rivkah fall off the camel? What was he doing? What impact was it having upon his countenance, upon his look, upon his bearing, upon his demeanor, upon his way? What did it do? What was surrounding him, the atmosphere of heaven surrounding him? Because he's meditating. He's in this process of bringing to the forefront of his mind. So he becomes the most beautiful man she has ever seen in her life. Not because of his physical appearance, not because of his features, because of what he was, what he represented in the kingdom realm. Now, that may give some of us a little bit of hope who aren't maybe look, you want to be beautiful? Meditate on the Torah. Meditate on the ways of the Holy One. Stay focused. Get you a discipline. Get you a musar where you're engaged and you're touching heaven every single day in multiple ways. And you're bringing things of the heavenly realm into the earthly realm, bringing things beyond, through the veil, through the unseen into the seen, from the unseen into the seen. That will make you beautiful, irresistible, dangerous in many, many ways. And so she falls off her camel. And so maybe there's a little touch of Hallmark in the story after all. As a matter of fact, if we continue the story, let's go on to the end of that part of the story. It says, chapter 24. And then Itak brought her, that's Rivkah, into his mother Sarah's tent. And he took Rivkah, and she became his wife. And then these next 4 words. We haven't seen this before in Torah. This is shocking. I mean, what does it got to do with anything? It says, and he loved her. And he loved her. Don't give up on love. I mean, love is not the reason you live, but love is this blessed thing that God gives. You know, and I love watching Fiddler on the Roof. Many of you do like to watch that. There's this beautiful scene in Fiddler on the Roof. After the first of the children comes and says, you know, we're not going to follow the pattern you set for us. We're going to marry each other. I'm not going to marry the guy you chose for me. And they have this discussion. Tevye and Gold, the husband, the mother, and father have this discussion. It's like, why? And then he says, and the reason was because we love each other. It's like, what's that got to do with anything? But then they have this conversation, and so Tevye says to Golda, do you love me? They've been married 25 years. They've got 4 children. They've been through real tough times, and it's getting tougher and tougher and tougher, but they've stuck together through that period of time. But Tevye says, with this impish look in his face, childish little boy, look and says, do you love me, Golda? Golda says, 25 years I'm married to you. I've washed your clothes. I've put your food on the table. I've nursed your babies. What do you ask me now if I love you? She says, I know. But do you love me? You're a fool. She says, you're a fool. He says, I know. But do you love me? She says, 25 years I've cleaned your house. I've washed your clothes. I guess I do love you. And Tevye looks like he just came alive inside. And he smiles like childish grin, and he says, and I believe I love you too. Now, I don't want to overemphasize romantic love. I don't want you to overemphasize romantic love. But I also don't want you to discount the fact that a husband and a wife were made to love one another. They were made not just to procreate, although that is a critical call to the cross-generational purpose. They were not just made to function in a world and be a light in the world, though that is a critical part of the function. We're also designed with the capacity to have love for our spouse in ways that there can be no other form of love that can match or compare to. And for those of you who are seeking to one day marry, don't give it away before you get the marriage. Don't try practicing love on strangers. Don't try practicing love on people that might possibly turn into something later on down the road. Love is developed. Love is mature. Love is what Paul said it was in 1 Corinthians 13. And it has very little to do, though something to do, with the flesh. It is primarily a function of the Spirit, and upon working together and functioning in purpose and bringing forth purposes. And then emotions come. And then feelings develop. And then a sense of unity, camaraderie begins to develop. So I encourage you, if you're already married and you've lost your sense of love, if you're just now in a partnership, if you're just now in an enterprise, and you have, if the spouse were to ask you today, Golda, I know, but do you love me? Before you just answered because you're used to saying, I love you too. If you searched your heart, if you searched your behaviors, if you searched the way you had spoken to that person and the way you wished to speak to that person, if you spoke to the way you acted in response to that person and responded to their presence and their dreams and their plans, would you really say, I believe I love you too? Now, I encourage you because this is all about passing a baton. But passing a baton without the passion and the fire and the life and the joy of relationship is like passing a cold potato. Can't eat it. You don't want to smell it. Doesn't smell that good. Ain't nothing special about it. But when you pass the baton with a sense of love, with a sense of camaraderie, with a sense of beauty, with a sense of majesty, a falling off the camel kind of a understanding of the value of the other person, that's when you see we can pass this baton down to our children. And if we're having trouble with our children in the passing of the baton, perhaps they see something in our relationship to our spouse that tells them, I hear some words they're saying, but I don't see it coming out in their actions. I don't see true passion and fire and love one for another. So I encourage you, this is very important to the process we're called to engage in. Go thou, pass the baton, do it beautifully, with love, with joy, with hope. This is not hard work. This is the delight of our lives. Amen. Shabbat shalom. Leave a message. Tell us know you were here if you're online. For all those who are here, we'll be back in about 10 minutes or so, and we'll have a discussion about all these things. Shabbat shalom.